I got even for years of infidelity." She was leafing through a photo album, stopping every now and then to look at me, and finally she put the book aside and said, "Looks like you're my husband." I smiled and thought, "Yes, Greta, much to your misfortune." Greta married me a week after graduating from college, and the honeymoon hadn't even started until the third day when she started having sex with me. She didn't know that I knew, and frankly, I didn't care that she was doing it. Her first, at least the first I knew of, was one of the bellhops at the hotel. While we were there, she also managed to get the day manager and at least 2 room service waiters. I'm sure there were more, but again, I didn't care. Greta gave me everything I wanted, and as long as she didn't fall in love with some asshole or bring me some nasty disease, I was content. In my own strange way, I loved Greta, but her value to me went beyond her beautiful face, gorgeous body, and attractive nature. It was also her money, or rather the money she would receive after her parents died. They had something like $65 million that would go to their only child when they left this vale of tears for the great beyond. For a share like that, I could put up with a hell of a lot of infidelity. The key to the treasure chest was not to know, at least not yet, no one knows, that my bride is a round-heeled tramp. I had to be able to go to court and prove my wife's infidelity when the time came. If her parents lived another 20 years and everyone found out that I had known about Greta's behavior all along, it would seem to the judge that I was condoning it, and that simply could not be allowed to happen. After 3 years of our marriage, Greta's mother passed away, and I was very sorry because I really liked the old lady and I was sure she liked me. When she was gone, Greta's father, who never cared for me, started pressuring Greta to leave me and find someone more suitable. He even said he was going to change his will so that if she was still married to me after his death, she would receive nothing but a small allowance until she divorced me. Greta's mother had her own money, and she left Greta about $4 million, so it looked like it was time for me to wind down and get less than I'd bargained for. A lot less. And then the gods smiled on me and Greta was in a car accident. I got a call while I was having lunch with a client. I excused myself and rushed to the hospital. By the time I arrived, Greta had already been moved from ICU to ICU, and it was 2 hours before the doctor came out and told me that Greta had suffered a head injury, her condition was stable, but there were some concerns. "She's out of danger, but we won't know more until she wakes up and we run tests." For the next 9 hours, I sat next to her bed and held her hand. Okay. I wanted her money, but I still cared about her, while we waited for her to come to her senses. It was 3 in the morning when I felt her fingers squeeze my hand, and when I looked over, I saw her looking at me. "Who are you?" The doctor said she had amnesia, and that they couldn't tell if it was temporary or permanent. 3 days later, I took her home to start teaching her what she had forgotten and introducing her to people she should have known. We were pulling up to the house when she pointed out the car window. "Who's that?" I looked where she was pointing and saw that it was Amos, an older man who tended the lawn and flower garden. That thought hit me like a ton of bricks. Greta's father was an asshole, and he had passed his dislike of inferiors on to Greta. She wasn't as bad as he was, but she was still bad enough, and she didn't remember that. A plan began to form in his head. It took several weeks to formulate, and all the while, I was working with Greta, trying to get some of her lost knowledge back. I didn't try very hard to help her get her memory back because, according to my plan, she wasn't supposed to know about certain things from her past. Finally, everything was ready, and I told Greta that we were going to have a welcome home Greta party for her. "Who's going to be there?" "Most of your friends from the club." "What's that?" "Don't you remember last year when you said you were tired of having sex with just me and asked me to let you date other men?" "No, I don't remember." "Is that really what I'm willing to do?" 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. I'm hoping that meeting some of your favorites will jog your memory. If we can get you to start remembering, maybe things will come back to you." "I don't know, honey. Wouldn't it be awkward if I didn't know who they were?" Maybe at first, my dear, but once you start, it won't make any difference. I ordered the provisions, of course. There was cake, champagne, and caviar, and I made sure Greta had a few glasses of bubbly before the guests started arriving. I dressed her in a mid-thigh black cocktail dress, high-heeled shoes, and a string of pearls, and she looked good enough to have sex. But of course that was the whole idea. The guests began to arrive, and Greta whispered in my ear, "I don't recognize any of them." This, of course, was not surprising since she had never seen any of them before that night. I waited for her to comment on the fact that they were all Hispanic, but she didn't utter a word. The men were all hired by agencies, given Greta's picture and told she was a rich weirdo who liked to play sexual games. At this point, she pretended that she had amnesia and that they were all former lovers who had been invited to a party to see if they could help her get her memory back. She expected them to have sex with her until she regained her memory or passed out. They were paid $1,000 each and promised another $500 if they all stayed in character. In addition, I hired 2 UCLA canine students to film what was going on. When all the participants were assembled, I leaned back in my chair and watched the show. It started when a man approached her with a glass of champagne in his hand. She was sitting in the chair looking around the room, and he said, "Hey, babe, Chad told me you probably won't remember me, but maybe something you and I liked to do when we were together will help you remember." He started flirting with her. Greta looked at me. I smiled and nodded my head in agreement. Then she turned back to the young guy, leaning forward again. 10 minutes later, the dress was gone and Greta was left in only her heeled shoes and pearls. Greta may have lost her memory, but her sexual desire remained intact, and she pounced on this man's cock like a shark on food. Greta was taking charge and directing her support staff to do some of the most exciting things I'd ever seen, and some I couldn't even imagine. 4 seemed to be her favorite number, and she spent quite a bit of time with 3 guys at the same time. I knew from the beginning that Greta had become my cuckold, but except when she and I had sex, I had never seen her in action. In a word, she was gorgeous. Her white body and waving blonde hair scattered over a sea of black was one of the nicest things I could imagine. I'm going to miss her. Inevitably, the men began to run out of steam, and one by one they dressed and left. 3 of them, including the guy she'd given a foot massage to, gave me their business cards and told me that if she wanted to play again, they'd be happy to come over at no charge. As the last man was about to leave, Greta tugged on his sleeve. "Please, one more time, please." He was ready, but Greta just couldn't get him to have sex with her again. I looked back at the catering staff who were cleaning up the buffet and turned to the man in charge. "The lady would like to express her appreciation to you and your team." He smiled broadly and hurried over to his crew to tell them the good news. I turned to my young moviegoers and said, "When they are done, it will be your turn." It was another 2 hours before Greta and I were alone. She was lying on the floor, wet with sweat, and I thought that, strangely enough, she had never looked more beautiful or desirable. "So, my love, do you remember anything?" "The only thing I remember is that the only man I have yet to enjoy tonight is my husband." I had gotten sloppy seconds from Greta before, but never anything approaching this. But I had to be a loving husband, so I boldly undressed. "As you wish, my love. As you wish." The next morning, I woke up to the fact that Greta wanted to have sex with me. This was something new. Greta almost never turned me down when I wanted sex. But she was not a morning person. With the exception of the honeymoon, she'd never had sex with me in the morning. In fact, she'd pushed me away. And yet here she was the initiator. I lifted my head and looked up at her and saw that she was looking down at me. She pulled away from me to say, "Good morning, my love," and then returned to my body. When it was over, she pulled me to her for a long, sensual kiss, and when she broke it off, she said, "You must love me very much to let me do what I did last night. Thank you." "For what?" "For being mine." For the first time, I was starting to feel like an asshole. Well, feelings aside, I knew that her memory might eventually return to her and that her father would likely succeed in his campaign to separate us. So after getting the money, I went ahead with my plan. I commissioned film students to make a movie similar to what a private investigator would make during a stakeout. And when they delivered the film, I found that it was perfect. It showed Greta greeting her guests with a glass of champagne in her hand and then turning into a lecherous cheater. The entire recording was interesting, but there were a few outstanding scenes. The tape, of course, was edited so that there was no trace of me on it, and no one filmed the two students, so all you saw was Greta in a sea of guys. Everything was just perfect, and all that was left was to go to a lawyer. I have an evil streak in me that sometimes makes itself known. It's not because I'm an angry person. It usually happens when someone bullies me, and since my personal motto has always been, don't get mad, get even, then move on, I usually find a way to get revenge. In Greta's case, I got even for years of infidelity. But even then, it was more business than retribution. I just negotiated a severance package, so to speak. It was in that mood, not to be angry but to get even, that I showed up unannounced at her father's office. I couldn't have wished for a better start, as he set the tone for the visit. In as sarcastic a tone as he could muster, he said, "And to what do I owe the honor of seeing you today?" "I am here to bring you joyful news, dear father-in-law. I have decided to fulfill your cherished wish and remove myself from your life and the lives of your daughters." "What's the catch?" "No catch. I'm suing her for divorce on grounds of adultery. Knowing that you would never believe you could be so lucky, I even brought you a copy of the tape that I will use in court. I'm sure you realize that the publicity you and your daughter receive in the community will generate a lot of media interest, so I made several copies of the tape in case the Star and the National Enquirer wanted to publish the story. Who knows, maybe even Entertainment Tonight will want to run a couple spots on TV. I tossed him the tape and got up to leave. When I reached the door, I turned and looked at him. In the movie, I should have said nothing personal, but we both know that would be a lie, don't we? 15 minutes had passed, and I was on my way to meet with the divorce attorney when my cell phone rang. It was Greta's father. "So, asshole, what do you want?" I hung up. The phone rang again, I answered, and this time he was a little more polite. Not much, but enough to keep me from cutting him off again. "What can I do to make it stop?" "Why would you want to do that? You've been pushing Greta to divorce me for over a year now." "You know as well as I do that I can't let that tape go public." "I'm sorry, dear Daddy, but it's a done deal. I'm meeting with my lawyers in 5 minutes. If you don't want the tape to go public, make sure Greta turns herself in and then pray that neither of you do anything to piss me off. I'll make it more expensive for you to stay married to her than you can get out of a divorce." There was no way I expected that. The only reason I gave him a copy of the tape was so the asshole would have a heart attack when he saw his daughter happily having sex with Hispanics. "This might not be easy. You've been pushing for her to get rid of me for so long that she'll probably end up doing it. And I'd rather the divorce be on my terms than hers. I'll deal with Greta if that's what it takes." When all the papers were signed, I was secured for life. An irrevocable trust paid me an annual sum sufficient to keep me happy for the rest of my life, and all I had to do in return was remain married to Greta, destroy all copies of the tape, agree that in the event Greta decided to divorce me, I would not contest it, and finally, I was never to inform Greta of this arrangement. Done and done, period. That evening I came home and found Greta waiting for me in high heels and pearls, handing me a martini. "What's the occasion?" "I've been waiting all day for you to come home so I could have sex with you, and I thought this might be a costume to get you interested." I was given an excellent appointment, and then Greta spent the next 3 hours turning me into a quivering wreck. When she was done, she looked down at me and asked, "How long have you known me?" "Know what?" "That I was a cheater?" I decided it wasn't worth playing dumb and replied, "I've known since you had sex with the bellhop and waiters in the room on our honeymoon." "And yet you never said anything about it. Why?" I'm not a quick thinker, so I replied, "It's called being in love and not wanting to lose you. Confrontation could have ended us, so I decided to settle for what I could get and be happy I got just that. How long has it been since your memory came back to you?" "It began to return in the second week of my stay at home." "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because I was being a fool. I wanted to see who could take advantage of my condition." "So you knew the party was a sham?" "Yes, I did." "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because you were doing it for me to help me get my memory back. Then I realized that you knew what I had done all those years ago, and that even though you knew, you still loved me enough to try to help me." It was all I could do not to laugh and look at the floor to see how deep this garbage was getting. Instead, I just shrugged and sat there looking at her. "What I don't understand is why you only had Hispanics there. The truth is, my love, you have your father's bad views on them, and I wanted to shock you." I said that quickly, and thought that if there was nothing but them, it would make your prejudices come to the surface, and it might be a clue to the remnants of your memory. "But why did you film it?" "To have something about you when you leave me." "Leave you? What in heaven's name makes you think I would abandon you?" "Your father has been pursuing you for over a year to get you to leave me for someone more suitable. Considering how you've been running from me, I didn't think you cared enough about me to not let him get his way in the end." She threw herself into my arms and started crying. "Oh, baby, oh God, baby, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I never realized that you don't know how much I love you. I've had lovers, but only because I can't get enough of sex. But I think you saw that for yourself at the party. But you have my heart, baby, honestly. And as for my father, forget about him." I smiled inwardly, thinking, "Oh, I did, my love, I definitely did. Sorry, babe. I need sex all the time, and when you're not around, I grab the first man that comes along, and I'm never going to change. You've lived with that up until now and loved me. Can you continue to live with that? You're mine, and I'll never be afraid of losing you. I promise, baby. You'll be with me until death do us part. You'll be careful and never embarrass me or rub my nose in it with my friends?" "Never, baby, I promise. I'll never do anything to hurt you." "Okay. I think I can handle that." Greta was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Shall we do it again?" "Repeat what?" "Why don't we have another party?" "Well, a few guys gave me their cards and said they'd love to come again. But now that your memory has come back to you, can you handle the Latinos?" "Attitudes can't be overcome overnight, baby. But I can learn to love anyone who can do what they did to me at the party. Only thing is, can you double down?" The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you!